The EnduroPro Series kicked off its inaugural season at Daytona International Speedway with much anticipation. Troy Schultz started on pole in the C1 class, and with the first ever lap of EPS underway, Schultz wasted no time and began stamping his authority with an early lead. Soon, Anton Volodin quickly discovered the dangers of Turn 1 when he made friends with the pit exit wall. Later, Dennis Gurry got up close and personal with João Vaz and made contact while contesting third place. But above it all, Troy Schultz ran away with what looked like an effortless win. Anthony Kopak came home in second, while Iker Estefania finished third. In the Corvettes, Kevin O'Keefe topped the qualifying sheets. Early on, a game of musical chairs began for the C2 lead. Martins, O'Keefe, Rubens Velasco, and Stefan Overgaard all took turns swapping P1. When the dust settled, Overgaard was at the top of the pile and led comfortably up front for most of the race. But with only 10 minutes left, Martins had reeled in Overgaard and blew by on the backstretch. Everything looked sewn up, but right before Martins could take the white flag, he made a mistake while exiting the bus stop. As he attempted to recover, the lapped car of Sean O'Hara tried to take avoiding action, but tragically plowed into the leader. Overgaard cruised home to a surprise win, while Manuel Sanchez finished second and Francisco Esteve Albert completed the C2 podium. Meanwhile, in C3, Tom Valentini led the field to the green. Draft lock was the story of the day, and the top pack was 10 cars deep, even after 7 laps. After the first set of stops, though, it was Paulo Martins who began to pull away with the lead. He held P1 for the rest of his stint, but João Cardoso managed to jump the green and black machine during the second pit stop. This lit the fire under Martins, who reeled in João's MP4 and made the pass with only 20 minutes left to go. But there was one more twist to come as Martins found himself short on fuel and was forced to hand over the lead to Cardoso for the final time. The Portuguese driver claimed victory in round 1 and was joined by Patrick Pitchler and Tom Valentini on the podium. Round 2 brought the series to the Amish country as they got ready to tackle MidOhio. With Troy Schultz unable to attend, João Vaz stepped up to the plate and claimed pole in C1. Iker Estefania managed to slip into the lead when they came upon traffic on lap 8, but the Spaniard was given a black flag by the stewards for making contact with Vaz 2 laps prior. Dennis Gurry challenged Vaz next, but similarly came together with the leader and came off the worst of the two. Even more contact was to come for Vaz, first with Derek Waller, then Mert Utzel. Vaz miraculously avoided major damage every single time. By now, only 4 C1 cars were left on track, and Estefania was hurrying to run down Mark Muckey in third. Sadly, a slight bit of contact entering Thunder Valley sent both cars off track. Estefania tried to give the position back, but waiting on the racing line proved a dangerous decision, and Jaden Conright's Corvette put a disappointing period on the green and black car's day. Up front, Vaz proved himself a step above the rest by taking the win ahead of Volodin in second and Muckey in third. Meanwhile, Ruben Velasco led the C2 field to the green, but when the race started, Velasco promptly threw away his hard work at the very first corner by going wide. Overgaard found himself in the lead yet again, but at 30 minutes in, a mistake in turn 1 sent the blue and white car bouncing across the grass. Andre Martins capitalized and moved himself into P1. Velasco was looking at damage control with a podium finish, but a mistake while dealing with traffic in madness caused him to spin. Before he knew it, he was collected by newcomer Braden Eves. Braden was able to continue, but Ruben's damage was terminal. The laps nervously ticked by for Martins, but this time the Portuguese driver held on for redemption and grabbed the C2 class win emphatically. Eves proved himself one to watch by finishing second, while Manuel Sanchez rounded out the podium. Finally, in C3, João Cardoso topped the qualifying sheets. He duly picked up where he left off and started to scamper away with the lead. A very patient Patrick Pitchler hunted down Omar Zanchi for the final podium spot all race long, and on lap 44, it all paid off in the carousel. But when all was said and done, João was unbothered for the entirety of the race and romped off with a win. Tom Valentini and Patrick Pitchler repeated the podium finishes, grabbing second and third respectively. After the tight confines of MidOhio, the drivers next arrived at Virginia International Raceway's many twists and turns to see how all 3 classes could handle the so-called mini-green hell. Troy Schultz returned in fine form and took the pole in C1, but it was only by a mere 4 1/1000ths of a second. As expected, traffic was a linchpin in the race, and on lap 14, Troy found himself going wide at Hogpen to avoid a C3 car. Vaz jumped at the chance and blasted into first. Later, the pendulum swung the other way when Zhao ran into trouble of his own on lap 26. Troy easily moved himself back to the top spot. After pit stops, Schultz emerged with his lead intact, but that's when it all went pear-shaped. Troy accidentally punted Jarrett Lawson and was given a stop-and-go penalty. Schultz served it, but when he went to leave his stall, the gas went down, the clutch went out, and before you could blink, Jerry Mojak's Corvette sent both cars flying down the front stretch. Troy's day was done. With a handy gap back to Mark Mucky, Vaz claimed win number 2. Mucky was second, and Iker Estefania achieved a quiet third. Newcomer Farouk Manzar snagged first position when C2 qualifying ended. Top contender Andre Martins had a miserable day, which began with contact in the very first corner not once, but twice. The damage to his handling left his pace suffering the entire race. Ruben Velasco was looking good to fight for a podium, but a bad pit injury put paid to those hopes. David DeRoche made good of his consistency and continued to pluck up spots late in the race. Ahead of it all, Manzar looked flawless and smashed the rest of the field to bits with his win. Manuel Sanchez finished second, while DeRoche took the final podium spot. To the surprise of many, Andreas Allmensberger managed to put himself on pole in C3. Cardozo wasted no time and slipped right past the number 304 car on the backstretch before the first lap was even over. Later, Andreas miraculously managed to avoid serious damage when he was collected by the HPD of Anton Volodin. Sadly, though, this demoted him yet another position behind his teammate. In the end, Cardozo made it 3 on the trot and was unchallenged the entire way. Patrick Pitchler was second, while Allmensberger wrapped up third. For round 4, the EnduroPro Series pitted the drivers against the punishing Laguna Seca in the hills of California. C1 class saw Zhao Vaz finally vanquish Troy Schultz in qualifying. When the green fell, traffic once again kept things close between the two titans. But off-tracks caused Troy enough damage that after only 13 minutes, the American decided to park it. Farther down, Anton Volodin was on a charge as he sliced his way from 4th to 2nd. But even he was prone to the carnage of Laguna Seca and was black flagged for interclass contact and rainy curve. Anton soon retired, and when the checkered flag fell, only 3 HPDs were still circulating. Vaz in first, Estefania in second, and Lars Conrad a few laps down in third. In C2, another newcomer took the pole with Sven Kresmer on top. Kresmer quickly separated himself from the field while Braden Eves was unable to keep pace. Eves seemed to have second place locked up, but when he attempted to pass Mike Sargent into the corkscrew, the MP4 skidded off track and collected the black Corvette. The points leader Manuel Sanchez inherited the spot, but later failed to avoid a spinning C3 car and took a monstrous blow that put him out of the running. Kresmer continued on unchallenged to the flag and won in his first time out. David DeRoche picked up the pieces to grab his second podium, and Kevin O'Keefe quietly ran his car to the third spot. For the C3 class, João Cardozo reclaimed P1 after being knocked off the pole in the previous round. As was becoming tradition, Cardozo began to give himself a comfortable lead. Pitchler held second, but his teammate Tom Valentini kept him under threat. The two traded P2 back and forth, but in the end it was the corkscrew that decided their fate. Pitchler blew the famous chicane, which allowed his teammate through to claim second. Cardozo cruised to his 4th win in a row, while Pitchler naturally completed the podium. With 4 races finished, a third of the season is now gone. The challenge of endurance and speed has been too much for some, and we'll soon see who is the last man standing as we enter the next chapter of the season at Watkins Glen International.